used to work in the corrections and legal field, and now as a doctoral student studying criminology and criminal justice, I spent years learning about the realities of those who are impacted by the system. And throughout this time, I've engaged in countless conversations with those currently and formerly incarcerated, as well as their friends and family.
I am thrilled to be here today at the culmination of many months of work.
These conversations have transformed how I view the world. They have taught me lessons no classroom ever could, and have instilled in me both an urgency and hope for criminal legal reform.
My collaborators in this work, CHRISTINA PLAKAS and Troy Williams, each bring their own background and perspectives. I'd say that we share a common belief in respecting people's humanity and dignity. And we share a passion for standing up for those who are impacted by our carceral systems. In the human rights world, after gross human rights violations, we say that people have a right to know what happened and under what circumstances it happened. This knowing paves the way for justice and repair. And this is why we create initiatives that focus on truth-telling. Jennifer Lackey, a philosophy professor at Northwestern, has argued that in addition to the right to know, people have a right to be known. They have a right to be heard or seen or otherwise perceived by our senses so that they are not forgotten, ignored, erased. In describing the right to know, Dr. Lackey is thinking about the exceptional circumstances such as the aftermath of armed conflict, or the reparations that are due after massive historic injustices, such as enslavement and colonization. It is my belief that these rights, the right to know and the right to be known, are also relevant in the everyday, because we are living in a society that chooses to acknowledge only some stories and that feels comfortable with the suffering of those whose stories we ignore. Our stories are important for so many reasons. Through storytelling, we can impart lessons. We can share our culture and history. Storytelling is also a form of truth-telling, a way for people to share their truth and their experiences. It is an avenue for understanding, which is something we are in great need of, especially here in South Carolina. There are certain seasons in South Carolina, I know y'all are gonna know what I'm talking about, when the air feels like it's going to suffocate you. And of course, you all know, as we approach warmer months, the air is thick with humidity and pollen. But sometimes, it feels to me like it's not just humidity and pollen. Like there's something else in the air. Sometimes it feels like what is suffocating us, what is suffocating all of us, is the miasma that permeates when we bury the truth. What would happen if we opened ourselves to people's stories? If we tried to understand? If we heard stories that challenged the one-dimensional pictures we create of entire groups of people? What if, instead of only hearing stories about certain people, we heard stories from them? What would happen if we were willing to sit with complexity? Maybe, if we did that, we could take the time to understand our neighbors, who might have a different cultural or religious background, who might be immigrants, who might be transgender, or who might have been incarcerated. Maybe we wouldn't be so quick to give groups of people a single label and then discard them. It is my hope that if we opened ourselves to their stories, that we would pause before allowing our communities and our governments to make choices that actively harm them. At the core of the Bridging Worlds collaboration is a strong desire to make space for the stories of those impacted by incarceration, people who deserve better than we have given them.
Thank you, Professor. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm very honored to be here to share my story with you. I can't really tell you my story without first telling you a little bit about my parents. They married very young. My mom was only 15 and my dad was 18. They married because my mom was pregnant with my older brother. They weren't ready to become parents, but they did the best they could, as a lot of people do. My dad had had some problems in his youth and was sent to what was in those days called a reform school. Some of you that are a little older might remember that. It was a rough place, and my dad had to become tough in order to survive. He learned how to fight, how to play pool, and how to become a hustler. For the majority of his life, he remained a hustler and was in and out of prison many times. During the long stretches of time between each incarceration, he found it difficult to find jobs because of his criminal record. He decided it would be best for him to own his own business, so he became a bar owner. Sadly, in the bar business, though, associations can be made which can lead to illegal activities. He quickly realized that he could make more money selling drugs that his customers used than he could from the actual bar business. At first, he began selling joints or marijuana cigarettes for people that aren't familiar with what that is. I remember once when I was 13 and my older brother Jeff was 18, my daddy came in the kitchen with a big old black hefty trash bag full of marijuana, threw it on the kitchen table and told me and my brother to start rolling. That my brother taught me how to roll, and that was the first time I ever smoked pot, and boy did I think I was cool. I was sitting there smoking pot with my older brother who was my idol, and then it wasn't long I started smoking pot with my dad. But we had a good time, but I didn't realize at the time that that was a dysfunctional home environment. Not too long after the marijuana sales started, my dad also started selling cocaine. It was the 80s and everyone that we knew was doing it. And I grew up thinking that it was perfectly normal to have drugs in the house. And in addition to selling drugs, my dad also gambled a lot. He would place bets on sporting events with bookies in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. And he also hosted high-stakes poker games at our home. Many nights I went to sleep with a kitchen full of poker players and woke up with them still there the next morning. As I passed by the kitchen table on my way to school, some of the players would pat me on the head and hand me a 20. When my dad inevitably got caught and was sentenced to prison, he had me bring him drugs so that he could sell them on the inside. He would pay a mule to smuggle the drugs from the visitation area into the general population. Considering my childhood, I guess it was no surprise that I'd end up in prison myself one day. My drug use continued and escalated until one day I must have taken too much or gotten hold of something bad, because I really do believe that I lost my mind for a period of time. The lines between right and wrong ceased to exist, and I participated in some armed robberies and burglaries in my desperation to get more money for drugs. At the time of my arrest, I had 3 young children, and much to my dismay, I learned from the jail staff that I was pregnant with my 4th. When I came down off the drugs and realized what I had done, and that I had also put my unborn child at risk, I felt like the lowest scum of the earth. I sunk into the deepest depression imaginable and decided that any punishment they gave me would be too good for my sorry tale. When they told me that my co-defendant had thrown me under the bus and said I was the mastermind, I didn't care. When they placed warrants in front of me, I signed every one of them. I pled guilty to things I didn't even do because I didn't care what happened to me. I felt like my family and my beloved children would be better off without me, and I just wanted to go away forever. I was sentenced to 30 years in prison not long after giving birth to my youngest son. I got to keep him in the hospital for 3 days before giving him to my mom. I didn't see him again until he was a year old. God bless my sweet mama. She took all 4 of my children and raised them as her own. Things weren't easy for her either. She was 51 years old, and I left her with an 8-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn infant. My poor old mama had 3 in diapers at one time. As you might can imagine, she was not very happy with me. She was hurt, disappointed, angry, ashamed, but she still loved me enough to take my kids and keep them from being taken by the state. And I'll forever be grateful to her for that. She ended up adopting my kids because that was the only way that she could get more help for them. My dad was also in prison during this time, so my mom was all alone in raising my kids. When she adopted them, she promised that I'd always be their mommy and she'd bring them to see me. But sadly, she wasn't able to keep her word on that. She had it so hard that she wasn't able to bring my children to see me very often. When I called home as often as I could, the calls were limited to 15 minutes each, and my mom couldn't afford to pay for very many of them. I wrote countless letters, but they mostly remained unopened and unread. And when I'd ask my mom if the kids had read my letters, she'd say, "Well, they're on the living room table in there, Jada, if they want to read them." I'm not really sure why my mom didn't encourage the kids to take more of an interest in me, but I can't be upset with her because she did the best that she could. And she did the best thing she ever could have done for me by taking care of them. That's the only way I was able to do my time, was taking comfort in the knowledge that my kids weren't hungry or cold or being abused. My hope of one day being reunited with them was what kept me going all those years. During that time, I matured and realized that relationships are what's most important in life. First, my relationship with my higher power, my Creator, and then my relationship with my loved ones who He gave me. The ladies on the inside with me also became a surrogate family of sorts. I couldn't be a mother to my kids, but I could be to some of the young ladies on the inside that needed one. Prison is a harsh environment with very little empathy shown by the staff. The inmates only have each other to offer comfort, encouragement, and assistance during illness. I believe I would have died if it weren't for my fellow inmates. The lack of adequate medical care is shocking. I'm in a wheelchair right now because my chronic conditions were allowed to progress with very little treatment. Right now, I need a fusion in my neck, a rod in my spine, both shoulders and both knees replaced. If I get all the surgeries that the doctors tell me I need, I'll be the new bionic woman. I know I look a lot older, but I'm only 57 years old. I served 25 years and 8 months in prison. I was 29 when I went in and 55 when I got out. I've been out for a little over 2 years now, and I've been hospitalized 5 times. The doctors who've treated me ever since my release always ask me, how did you get in such terrible shape? And that's when I have no choice but to tell them I did 25 years in prison. And down to the last one, every doctor has said that explains it. This is something that shouldn't be. I'm almost certain, as I look around this room at the faces of all you nice people, I'm almost certain that every one of you would agree that yes, people who break the law deserve to be punished, but they also deserve to be treated humanely. And that doesn't happen in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. I'm sure that if you were in a similar situation, if something happened and you happen to have a wreck and somebody was accidentally killed, I mean, you can get in trouble without planning to commit a crime. But if something happened like that to you and you were sentenced to prison, I believe that everybody would hope that they would be treated humanely. But consider this. All it takes is being with someone who commits a crime. South Carolina sentences people to prison under a theory called the hand of one is the hand of all. And everybody, you need to be careful of the company that you keep. I want to speak to young people and warn them of the dangers of not considering consequences, the consequences of their actions. I want to do something to help people that were in a similar situation as myself when I was at a crossroads. In the 2 years since my release, I've endured many struggles with my health, but I've also endured discrimination in finding suitable housing. And even if I weren't disabled, it would be very difficult for me to find a job because virtually no one wants to hire a convicted felon. The deck against a returning citizen is stacked against them. And that is also something that shouldn't be. If we want to try to build a better life and don't want to return to prison, shouldn't society help us instead of hinder us? In addition to my health struggles, I've also struggled with trying to build a relationship with my children. They didn't know me growing up. My mother was their mother, and I can't just step into that role all these years later, nor would I want to. My mother showed them a mother's love, and I would never try to take her place. My entire immediate family died while I was in prison. My kids and I are the only family we have left. I'm thankful that they're giving me a second chance to be a part of their lives, and I'm thrilled and honored by the fact that 2 of my sons are here with me tonight. Aside from my children, and now I also have grandchildren, my mission in life is to advocate for prison reform. I spent half my life in prison, and those people are my family too. I'm still doing time in a sense because there are so many people I love who are suffering behind those razor wire fences. Many of them have no hope of ever getting out, and I'm not going to abandon them. They've lost enough, paid enough, and suffered enough, and I have to try to do something to help them. It is my hope that by sharing my story tonight, it will give everyone pause to consider this mostly forgotten population and be inspired to do something to help them receive the humane treatment that every human being deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm not sure how I will follow Miss Jada's, but I will try. I'm a first-year law student at the University of South Carolina, and I'm honored to be here with you all and share stories alongside all of these great people. So I will just get started. This is to my brother. What did you think when you became an older brother again when you were 18 years old? I thought that I was the luckiest person in the world to be your sister, and there was no one cooler than you were. I bragged to all of my friends about my perfect big brother, who was so smart that he went to Clemson, who gave the best Christmas presents, and who was immediately good at every sport or game. The brother that taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels, gave me my first cell phone, and built me a treehouse in our backyard. Every Sunday on the way home from church, I would close my eyes as we turned onto our street, hoping that when I opened them, your truck would be in the driveway. What did you think when I grew up and wanted to be just like you? Looking back now, I bet that it was a lot of pressure to constantly have someone looking up to you as an example. I thought that whatever I did, I would always be okay because I would have you to turn to for advice. It never occurred to me that you never really had that person for yourself. All I was concerned with was growing up and getting out of our parents' house. So when I fulfilled my longtime dream and went to Clemson just like you did, I knew it would be the best time of my life. I also knew that I was making you proud. What were you thinking the night that you were arrested? I was sitting at home on Sunday, waiting for your truck to pull in the driveway, thinking there must have been some mistake. My brother did not do drugs. My brother was not violent. He had never even had a speeding ticket. I was thinking of how angry I was, not only at how shocked and hurt I felt, but at how much you had hurt our mother. I've asked myself 1,000 times since that morning, what were you thinking? What were you thinking sitting in jail? Were you scared? I had never known you to be scared, but I definitely was. I was scared that your life was over, that I wouldn't see you again for a long time, and that you would lose your child, which are very real possibilities, with the prison system. Were you angry at the situation? I was, at all parties involved. At your friends that knew you struggled with addiction and never said anything, or better yet, fed into it. At myself for not realizing what was right in front of me, and especially at you for being my smart, perfect older brother and making a mistake like this. What were you thinking? What were you thinking after your bond hearing? I was thinking that a bail bondsman's office was one of the worst places that I had ever been to. He told me people like you should never get out of jail, and he had no idea why I was bailing you out. I should have told him how much more you were than this one mistake, that you had a life, a child, and you were successful. But I didn't, because I was scared. I was also embarrassed. Your face was in the newspaper and, God forbid, on Facebook, and everyone knew the latest gossip. I was embarrassed that you, who had always been so independent, who had gotten out of our hometown at 17, had to come back and basically start all over for a while. And most of all, I was sad. I hated that you had struggles that I never saw when I thought you were so well put together. I hated that you felt like you couldn't tell anyone how you felt, even your family, even me. I hated that you could only see your daughter on supervised visits and were at risk of losing rights to her completely. I hated that you needed help, and I felt so powerless to do anything about it. What were you thinking when the court order ended and you went back home? I thought that everything would be okay again. I thought you were seeing a therapist. I thought we would eventually convince you to go to rehab. And I thought you would face the charges when your court date came and we could move on with our lives. I never thought that you would continue to self-destruct in the exact same ways that had caused you so many problems before. I had no idea I could be so hurt by someone hurting themselves, and I especially didn't think it would be by you. What were you thinking July 4th, 2022? Why did a golf day with friends have to involve alcohol and drugs when you knew how they had already negatively affected you? Why would you choose to drive knowing you had been drinking? Why did your friends let you? What caused you to lose control of your car? And why you? These are questions that I will never know the answer to and will contemplate for the rest of my life. These questions, however, begin with earlier ones. Why did a first-time offender with a drug arrest not receive mandated drug counseling or psychological referral? Why did the probationary period, during which he had to reside with my parents, not include drug and alcohol tests and last until his court date? My brother was involved in a single vehicle accident that day in which he was ejected from his vehicle, sustained a traumatic brain injury, and went into a vegetative state that he never woke up from. The last 2.5 years have been the hardest of my life as I have dealt with his loss while going through so many milestones that I thought he would be here to see, like graduating from his alma mater and beginning law school. These 2 years have also brought a range of emotions, including anger at his choices, to realizations that, although my brother was not perfect and made his share of mistakes, things did not have to end up the way that they did. Why is there such a negative stigma and connotation around arrest and addiction? Why are people with issues and mistakes like these made to feel so embarrassed and ashamed of themselves after the fact? If our criminal system was one that was set up to rehabilitate and help those who are struggling to recover, I feel sure that my brother may still be here today. Instead, I find myself turning onto my street, hoping that when I get there, his truck will be in the driveway. Thank you.
I'm sitting in this small room, shackled to the table, and I'm praying to God. I'm praying to Jesus. I'm praying to Allah. Anybody. Like, Bismillah, Rahman Rahim, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Rahman Rahim. I'm talking about all that. I'm in there having conversations with God like I'm talking to myself, just asking Him to release me, to get me out of this situation. In this room, before I knew it, an hour had passed. And the guard came to the door. And you could hear the keys jingling. The judge wants to see you at this time. I had so many things running through my mind at this time. I I just couldn't fully comprehend or grasp what was taking place. But what I did know is that I needed to prepare myself for whatever the outcome. Before entering the courtroom, my lawyer explained to me that the jury had sent a note to the judge requesting to be instructed on the hand of one is the hand of all theory. The judge starts to speak. It goes on his spew. Ladies and gentlemen, this is in the matter involving Kareem Harry. The jury has sent in a note, gentlemen, that they would like to have further instruction from the court about the hand of one, hand of all theory. As I'm listening to him, in my head, I'm like, okay, the jury wants to hear about the hand of one, hand of all. Something gotta be wrong. I just remember the jury is being re-instructed and the jury is sent back out to deliberate. I'm sent back into this room. Another hour had passed, and about a half, in the distance I could hear keys jiggling. And the footsteps got closer. The guard put the key in the door. It seemed like seconds I was in here, I guess because all I was doing was just pleading with God, Jesus, or somebody to bring me out of the situation that I'm in. The jury had reached a verdict. My stomach was in knots. I had to still myself and calm myself down and get my emotions and nerves intact. Preparing myself for the worst outcome, hoping for the best but expecting the worst. I'm at this table and all I can think about is this electrical shock box on my ankle. And how if I act up or move crazy in this courtroom, these guards are gonna blitz me, spray me, and then hit me with the taser. I ain't letting y'all hit me with no taser. Damn, these shoes tight. Fuck, I wear a size 13, they got me in size 10. Man, I don't even know who pants these is. I mean, I'm talking about this shirt, this ooh. I'm literally in something, an outfit that was stripped off a person that was being sent off to prison at my trial for 31 years. Talk about being draped in the cloak of innocence. The jury walked back in, one behind the other. I know they could feel me searching their faces for any sign, for some sign of compassion or remorse. I just remember clearly this young black male juror just having this smug look on his face like he was just looking down on me. Neither of the jurors, not one of the 12, would make eye contact with me nor look my way. A million feelings was running through my nerves at this time and through my soul as I'm listening to the jury being questioned by the judge about their votes. The jury agreeing it was a unanimous decision, and then the judge requesting the jury verdict from the foreperson to pass the verdict up to the clerk of court so that it could be published. It's the time. Okay, I'm going home. It was then my whole body locked up. The clerk began publishing the verdict. Indictment number 2012-GS-26-2938 in the state of South Carolina, county of Horry versus Kareem Harry on the charge of murder, read the jury by unanimous consent, find the defendant Kareem Harry guilty. Guilty? On Valentine's Day, guilty? Finding my way back home ever since. How y'all doing? My name is Kareem Harry. In 2011, I was arrested for murder and I sat in the county for 2 years. In 2013, I was wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to 31 years, a mandatory minimum sentence of 31 years. That was the time. This video that I'm about to show y'all, it was shot inside a Lee Correctional Institution, 2018, after the Lee Correctional riots, the most violent prison riot in 25 years. What y'all gonna see is someone who's fighting for his freedom, someone who's wrongfully convicted. You know, people looked at me and they said, you know, this guy's in denial, this guy's in denial. He hasn't accepted accountability, but I wasn't guilty. I was sitting inside a prison on a level 3, the most violent institution, and here I am, I'm a citizen. I'm like one of y'all. I ain't supposed to be back here. They won't let none of y'all back there, but I was back there wrongfully convicted. I had to put my trust in God, and that was a difference maker. And we're gonna let this video play.
On and on, wrongfully convicted. Sometimes it get really long. And they grade my children in the home. Ask for forgiveness on my sins every day of atone. Time goes on, long I'm barely trying to find my way back home. Days are long and the nights are long. And all these issues make me strong. But they can never make a thing stop. They can never make my dreams stop. In the midst of battle, never make a king stop. I'm like David with a slingshot. I'm going on. I'm going on. With all that baby trying to find my way back home. Look to the sky. Let's see it dawn.
That video was shot with 2 contraband cell phones. At the time, them cell phones was going for $2,000 a piece. $30 cell phones that y'all get from a Walmart. But I had to promote and I had to market my wrongful conviction. I had to let people know that, hey, I'm wrongfully convicted. So shortly after that, my door was kicked in and me and my homeboy's cell phone was taken. They shut my Facebook down, locked it. Hey, I said I gotta wait till I get out to get my Facebook back up and running to get that video. You know? I'd like to thank y'all for coming out and for being here. And y'all may ask, how was I wrongfully convicted? Once y'all look at the facts in this case. I was sentenced to under the hand of one hand of all for murder. Under the hand of one hand of all, the essential element of the crime is what they have to prove. The illegal purpose is what they would have to prove to hold me liable for the crime of hand of one hand of all, being that I was not the shooter. My alleged co-defendant, my friend who saved my life, he admitted what had happened, and he admitted in affidavit that I had nothing to do with this. 3 months after being arrested, they still held me. Prosecutor Bradley Richardson of the 15th Judicial Circuit in Horry County was the reason that I was able to be put in trial without any illegal purpose. I don't know if any of y'all heard of the Murdalls in South Carolina. Any of y'all heard of that? The 14th Circuit? Well, right over here in the 15th, it's some bigger, badder ones called the Richardsons. And they run everything in there. They in your courthouse, they your clerk of court, Jimmy Richardson, they your head solicitors, they everything around there. They run this whole circuit. My lawyer even knew that day that I was in trial that I was not supposed to be in trial for murder under the hand of one hand of all, because there had been no indictment for any illegal purpose. I would have had to have been charged with an armed robbery, kidnapping, or a burglary, something to put me on notice of what I'm supposed to prepare a defense against. What was I doing before this murder occurred? I was never put on notice of what I was to prepare a defense against. So I was never supposed to be at trial without having an indictment for armed robbery, kidnapping, or burglary with the murder. Even the judge knew, Judge Stephen H. John, he even knew I wasn't supposed to be in trial for murder under the hand of one hand of all. He called the prosecutor up and he called my lawyer up in the sidebar out of the hearing of the jury. No one will ever know what was said in there, but I know. What is this guy doing in here on the hand of one hand of all without any illegal purpose? That was the question that he had. My lawyer allowed it to continue to go on. The prosecutor, Bradley Coy Richardson, Coy, he was very sly. Everybody and their mother that day knew that I wasn't supposed to be on trial for murder under the hand of one hand of all, except the jury. And people ask, man, how was he wrongfully convicted? Check out the Richardsons in the 15th Judicial Circuit in Horry County. This prosecutor was allowed to commit many Brady violations, like hiding the fact that there was a gun on the scene of the crime that was removed from the victim, alleged victim, that was removed by the victims. He got that information and withheld that information in order to use it as leverage for a plea. So the principal, the one who did the shooting, really could have got a self-defense. But because this prosecutor held this information, he pled to voluntary manslaughter because he didn't want us to go down for something that he didn't do. They gave him 30 years on a plea. Then they came and offered me accessory after the fact. I said, man, y'all got to be crazy. I ain't taking no time for nothing I ain't did. Y'all crazy. Y'all, listen, I'm not taking no time for nothing I ain't did. And you know what he did? He came back and took me for murder, to trial for murder 2 or 3 months later. This prosecutor was allowed to commit fraud. That's how I was wrongfully convicted. But no one will ever hear that story if I wasn't given this opportunity today. So I thank y'all for coming out here and hearing my story and hearing our stories. Thank y'all.
Good afternoon. My name is Sienna Wilber, and I'm an undergraduate student here at the University of South Carolina. And I was blessed with this opportunity throughout the whole semester to explore something that means so much to me personally, wrongful convictions. So, the case of Cameron Todd Willingham shocked Texas and the nation in the early 1990s when he was convicted of setting a fire that killed his 3 young children. In December 1991, a devastating fire tore through Willingham's home in Corsicana, Texas. His 1-year-old twins and his 2-year-old daughter tragically perished in the blaze. Willingham, who was 23 at the time, escaped the fire and claimed that he desperately tried to save his children, but was unsuccessful. However, authorities quickly turned their focus on him as a suspect of committing arson. The fire was initially thought to be deliberately set. An investigator who later became a key figure in the case concluded that the blaze was arson, citing burn patterns and other questionable indicators as evidence. This forensic testimony became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, leading to Willingham's arrest. Despite Willingham's pleas of innocence, the jury convicted him in 1992. His defense attorneys failed to challenge the shaky forensic evidence adequately, and the trial proceeded with the assumption that Willingham had intentionally set the fire. Todd Willingham was wrongfully executed on the basis of invalid forensic evidence and prosecutorial misconduct. The prosecutor painted Mr. Willingham as someone with a dark personality, referencing an Iron Maiden band poster that had hung in his house saying it displayed violence and death. Additionally, a prosecutor in the case said that Willingham's tattoo of a skull and serpent fit the profile of a sociopath. Unfortunately, this case is not unique. Between 3 and 6% of people that are serving time in prison are wrongfully convicted. To put things into perspective, since 1989, 27,000 years collectively have been wrongfully served. While the law has its flaws, the real problem lies within the legal system and the individuals that are representing the law. It is said that justice is blind, yet for many who have been wrongfully convicted, it seems that justice has turned its back. Behind the thick walls and iron bars of our prison system, innocent men and women fight for their freedom, often with little more than sheer willpower, in the hope that one day the truth will prevail. For those incarcerated for crimes they did not commit, the journey to exoneration is a lonely battle. The legal system, meant to serve justice, can instead become a fortress of despair when it fails. Prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective defense, and hidden evidence are just a few of the many factors that contribute to wrongful convictions. Yet in the midst of this injustice, there are many stories of resilience and individuals who refuse to accept a fate that was unjustly decided for them. Prison is not just a place of confinement, but a place that leaves lasting scars. The mental and emotional toll of incarceration can be life-threatening. For the wrongfully convicted, every day behind bars is a reminder of how their life was unjustly stolen. When I spoke with Kareem, who is also here today, and shared his story of being wrongfully convicted, he described how prison shrunk him and made him feel less than he ever was. The isolation, the fear, and the constant fight to simply survive left him with PTSD, a condition that still haunts him long after serving his sentence. But how does this happen? What goes so wrong in our justice system that innocent people are forced to suffer behind bars? The answer lies not within the law itself, but in those who enforce and interpret it. The law is meant to serve as a guiding force of fairness and truth, yet corruption, negligence, and hidden agendas can turn it into a weapon. Prosecutors withholding evidence, ineffective defense attorneys, without the resources or information to fight properly, and a system that prioritizes convictions over justice are all to blame. The prison system itself does little to correct these errors. Once a person is inside, the prison's role is simply just to house them. The real issue lies within the Attorney General's, public defenders, and solicitor's office that fail to uphold the integrity of justice. Change does not start in the prison yard, it starts in the courtroom. Those wrongfully convicted must often take matters into their own hands, learning their constitutional rights and fighting their own cases because the system that built to protect them has already failed them. Yet despite the trauma and injustice, hope remains. It remains in the mother who never gives up and continues to fight for her child's innocence. It remains in the relentless pursuit of truth by those who refuse to be silenced. And it remains in the growing awareness that wrongful convictions are a glaring flaw in a system that demands reform. Prison should not be a place of suffering, but rehabilitation. Yet in its current state, it often creates more harm than good. Prisons are overcrowded, unsanitary, and filled with violence, turning punishment into a cycle of suffering rather than rehabilitation. Inmates are often subjected to inhumane conditions, including solitary confinement, poor medical care, and psychological abuse, stripping them of their dignity. Instead of fostering change, prisons dehumanize individuals and trap them into a broken system that offers little hope for a better future. People leave prison worse than when they entered, forced to commit crimes just to survive behind bars. Corruption is growing as institutions profit off criminal activity, prioritizing money over humanity. True justice means more than simply sentencing the guilty. It means protecting the innocent. It means ensuring that every person accused of a crime has the right to a fair trial, competent legal representation, and access to all evidence that can impact their case. It means demanding accountability for those in power and refusing to look away from the stories of the wrongfully convicted simply because they make us uncomfortable. The law is a living, breathing document meant to serve the people, but it is only as just as those who uphold it. The stories of wrongful convictions must not remain in the shadows. They must be told, heard, and acted upon. Because behind every wrongful conviction is not just an individual, it is a family, a mother's pain, and a community's loss. True justice must prevail, because without it, any one of us in this room could become a part of the devastating 3 and 6% of those who are wrongfully convicted, stripped away of their freedom, and forced to pay for a crime that they never committed. Thank you.
It's amazing how preparing for this, all the emotion didn't come till just now. Thank you, Aparna. Thank CHRISTINA, Troy. Leadership in this program has been amazing. My classmates, my teammates here that made me better through this experience. And I want to thank God for the journey, and thank all of you for making it a special moment along the way. We're doing this together, you know. 3-part story begins July 1995. Title is Lonely Days, Lonely Nights. The nights in the cave.
The armor-suited warrior walks resolutely towards his destination. The end of another day. Wasted time, lost dreams. His suit shines in the glow of dusk, as do the bars, the fences, and the barbed wire that surround him. And therein lies the cruel irony, that as the bars and fences keep him in, so the cold, hard armor of his suit keeps others out. If chivalry is dead, someone forgot to tell the knights of lonely days, the faceless entities among thousands of masked warriors that stroll the halls of the house of the dead. It's the arena of slow death, prison in America. The gallant knights stride each day toward the months, years, and decades. Time is their nemesis, acknowledging its passing their only solace. They continue to fearlessly fight on, striving from battle to battle, until at last they must stop to ask what war they are fighting. Many, lost and forgotten, struggle to maintain hope, insanity, spirit, and dignity. Some lose the war, succumbing to faded hope, faded dreams, faded life. The immaculate armor shines and is meticulously kept. There are no blemishes, cracks, or chinks in evidence. There will never be a rust spot or dent visible to be exploited by predatory counterparts. The emotions are masked, the true feelings hidden far below the surface of the cold steel that envelops him. It is far below where the lonely, love-starved man-child resides. He remains, for survival's sake, encased in his protective shell. His instincts are his shield, his wit is his sword, his courage is his lance. Always polished, the armor is prepared for battle. Only the closest of confidants ever glimpse the real person within. He mustn't divulge the pain he feels, the loneliness or boredom that throbs in his bones as the ache of a cancer. To reveal the pain, to allow others to witness his weakness, is to become prey to the unmerciful, unrelenting torture from others seeking to vent their own misery and blighted lives. For them, inflicting pain on others acts as an anesthetic for their own. Only the fiercest, bravest knights survive to the end. For some, the end is freedom. For others, it is the distant hope of heaven. For many, the gallantry pays off in unfulfilled aspirations and slow dissolution in the house of the dead. Onward he fights, repressing the pain, suppressing the fleeting joy of parole expectations or news from mother, father, sister, or a lover. He knows he must remain totally within his armor, never showing to others what so desperately needs to be shared. Always polishing, he gleams. Occasionally, he contemplates the possibility that his shining armor has become his tormentor, his true adversary. But he resigns himself to this lesser of two evils and begins to polish his sanctuary once more, polish the silver coat to a grand brilliance, routine, more routine, interminable sameness. The night battles on, alone, seeking reserves of strength and the survival spirit within. He wonders how deep those reserves go as he surveys the lost souls who surround him. Can the warrior outrun the demon of time, or has it already caught him? The uneasy thought that perhaps he has become too comfortable, too well adapted to his solitary existence, is pushed aside. He does acknowledge his strange sense of contentment, however, the practiced ease of traveling within the abyss of aloneness. Yet he mustn't think too much. There's little room for profundity in the arena of slow death. Slow death sometimes approaches at supersonic speeds. The pervasive fear, frustration, and rage that surround him must continuously be monitored. He lives in a powder keg with a short fuse, and sparks appear instantly from nowhere. The armored knight strides determinedly towards his destination, never wavering, never looking back, for the demon may be gaining. He strives for his freedom, the place where he thinks he can finally shed his protective armor. Then at last he can emerge whole. But he still has battles to fight, wars to win. Not until he has opened his heart and once again begun to trust his fellow man can he be totally free. So many lonely days, too many lonely nights. Christ-Filled Days, Peace-Filled Nights by Jimmy MacPhee, August 2012. It has been almost 2 decades since I wrote Lonely Days, Lonely Nights while housed in a supermax solitary confinement cell due to a serious assault and other behavioral problems. I had been incarcerated for 20 years at that time, and it was the attempt of a tortured soul with little hope, faith, and love in my heart to put into words the emotions of living as a long-term prisoner. At this writing, although still in prison for almost 4 decades, my view of the world and my place in it has been tremendously transformed. Today, as a devout follower of Jesus Christ, I have, through his all-powerful healing spirit, found purpose, fulfillment, and that oh so elusive gift of peace. I live in the character-based unit CBU rehabilitation program at Perry Correctional Institution, of which I was housed with Kareem a few years back, I may add. Now spending my days not in cold isolation, but in warm camaraderie with 200 others striving to better their lives and those that surround them. While spending my days as a teacher, mentor, and supportive friend to others, I have found true value as a person and as a man. There is power found in pain and strength derived from suffering. For the patience and wisdom with which God has blessed me from the trials and tribulations have laid before me, have shaped me into the teacher and leader I've become. As Romans 11:36 proclaims, all the glory goes to God for anything good in my life today. Even a battle-scarred and grayed knight of too many humanly fought wars can at last comprehend that the best investment in life is yourself to others. As I fully give my life to Jesus and others, I find life in all its rich fullness. To shed the cold human shell that hinders life and to adopt the edifying, loving warmth of Jesus Christ is to find peace and freedom no matter my station in this glorious and eternal journey. Today, as a man of purpose and peace, I wear the glorious armor of God described in Ephesians 6, verses 10 to 20. I now proceed through all manners of adversity with the calm assurance of his transcendent grace. As the arena of slow death has been transformed into the arena of abundant life. More Christ-filled days, peace-filled nights by Jimmy MacPhee, March 2025. Here in 2025, my story continues as I was granted parole 5 years ago in March 2020 after serving 45 years behind prison walls. Today, I'm an ordained minister, a married man, and executive director of a nonprofit organization called On the Rock Ministries. Our mission is to transform prison culture through funding of gospel-centered education and discipleship, breaking the cycle of addiction and recidivism to heal families and create safer communities. We are creating a world where prisons become pathways to purpose, families are healed, and communities flourish through the transformative power of Christian education. I now understand that the flawed coping strategy of internalizing my pain, masking the feelings that a healthy individual must express, and trusting only in myself was the recipe for unnecessary and unimaginable suffering. That refusal to share and open my heart to God and my fellow man was not only increasing the pain, but was indeed the very source of that suffering. The armor of God shines more brightly each day with the understanding that as one of His warriors, the war is won, not with brute force, but with battle-tested character. Always polished, the armor is prepared for the spiritual battle won with God's strength. For human effort is inadequate, but God's power is invincible. The peace-filled knight, once an ambassador in chains, now strides purposefully under God's direction, far beyond prison walls, sharing His message of hope. I am forever grateful for my Christ-filled days and my rich, abundant life as a peace-filled knight. Thank you, and bless you all.
When I got to Kirkland Infirmary on September 18th, the condition started then. I laid in that bed right there. Just got out of the hospital with a messed up spine and a plate in my neck. And I stayed in the bed in Kirkland without a bath until December the 5th of 2018. And I was transferred to Lee. And when I got to Lee, I had a bad cough. I couldn't figure out where it come from, so they tested me. I got TB, tuberculosis, from Kirkland. The guy who they had in the room before me had tuberculosis, and they didn't clean the room. So I caught TB. There was the journey. I had to get on some medication for that. It took me 5 years to get a wheelchair. The law says that they're required to do the bare minimum, is what the law says. And that's exactly what they do. There's no accountability. And the treatment is horrible, horrific. And I believe I would have died there, if it wasn't for the inmates. And it's not supposed to be like that. The inmates done most of the work to help us, you know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for the inmates, we was through. I was in my house in Mounts Corner, South Carolina. They came and got me, took me to Greenville, said they had a warrant for me. So I went to the county jail, and they denied me bond. They violated my probation because I just caught another charge. But I was on medication, and I was supposed to be on a 25 milligram Seroquel. Instead, they upped the Seroquel to 300 milligrams. It was a mistake. It was by accident. It knocked me out. When I came to, I had blood running down my head, and I just couldn't move. I got C4, C5, and C6 spinal cord injury with stenosis. I got a fracture in my neck from the spine. So what they did is put a metal plate in there. I got lupus too, and SDC was just giving me some cream to go on top of it. I'm battling both of them at the same time. So had this been proper medical treatment, this phase would never probably went this far. We could have probably shut it down or slowed her down. And it was just on the neglect of these people over here. They're going to continue to get away with it until a group of people come out and tell your story so people will know. And then we can come together and fight. But you can't fight until you come and somebody say something. This is the awareness to the people. Speak up. If you speak up for yourself and the next man, something can happen. Can't happen until you speak up. You know, there's a lot of problems in the prison system is people fear what they're going to do behind that. Or they already feel like their grievance system and the appeal process is going to go nowhere because they're not going to go against their own. And we see that. But if you get the word out there and initiate something, and we got something in writing, we got something to fight with.
I just can't do this. I don't need algebra. I won't ever use it. I'm too stupid to understand it, and I don't want to be here. I just can't do this. I don't need algebra. I won't ever use it. I'm too stupid to understand it, and I don't want to be here.
Well, I'm personally glad that you're here, and I don't believe that you're stupid at all. You've come this far. A stupid person doesn't do that. Will you at least let me help you?
And what is it you want for your so-called help? No one can help me.
I can, and I will if you let me. People can take away your job, your money, your home, and your belongings. They can even take away your children and your dignity. But you know the one thing that no one can ever take away from you, Lisa? Your education. So why wouldn't you want to secure the one thing that you can never lose? I know you can do this. And what do I want for my help? I want to see you get your GED because I actually do love you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I care about you and I just want to see you succeed.
No, it's not that.
Are you okay? What is it?
No one has ever said that to me.
I just know that education is important.
No, not that. No one has ever said that they loved me.
Lisa is 20 years old. She's one of 3 children and the mother of 5. At 20 years old, she's never been to church, never attended a school dance, or even had a regular meal. She's lost all of her teeth and most of her hair. She weighs about 90 pounds and stands about 5 feet tall. Lisa's 20 years old. 20 years old. She's been homeless, raped, burned with cigarettes, and sold for drugs by her own mother by the time she was 5 years old. And no one has ever said the words to her, "I love you." What does a felon look like? What does a felon look like? Like a monster? Like a victim? Like Lisa or like me? Lisa's story is not mine, but it is 100% true. I was her GED teacher and also an inmate at Leith Correctional Institution. And although my abuse was much different than what Lisa experienced, it still affected me for years throughout my childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood. It affected me at the time of my criminal episode, and it affects me still today. My abuser did not find worldly justice, as most will not. And yet, I do not resent justice that was given to my victim for my reactions. It was earned. Instead, today, I'm grateful for what I've learned, who I've met, and who I am because of it. My story was written on the cement floor of a prison where at 42 years old, I had found myself broken.
Old, her first piano day. He took her hand as Mama drove away. The door closed and the lesson soon began. He wasn't who he pretended to be, and no one knew the secrets he could keep. She was left to the mercies of a man. When her mama came to pick her up, she hid her tears and climbed in the truck. She was too little and she didn't understand. She was broken, and there was nothing she could do about it now. But pick up her pieces, hide her pain behind a smile, and pray that she'd only stay broken for a little while. She grew up hurt and abused. People walked away when they were through. So broken homes and marriages were no surprise. And every time she thought she might heal, the pain would show up so true and real. Till her mistakes were all she had to feel alive. So when the prison guard closed the gate, she hid her tears but did not hesitate to ask the Lord to please just let her die. 'Cause she was broken, and there was nothing she could do about it now. But pick up her pieces, hide her pain behind a smile. It seemed like she had been broken for so long now. Oh, but the Lord, He works with amazing grace. He healed her heart and He made it okay. For there's nothing that's broken or shattered or cracked the Father can't put back. She was broken, beautifully broken, and there was something she could do about it now. So she picked up those pieces and built a mosaic house, and even beautiful but broken looks like now. So pick up your pieces, God will work it all out. No matter just how broken you might seem now. And Lord, I thank you for what broken looks like now.
Media has always influenced me. I can take you to the picture frame in Scarface when I accepted certain values. I was gangbanging since I was 13 years old, so I have a rap sheet that's very long. And if all people have of you, if the only story that is written or that is out there about you is what's negative, what are people to assume? I went to San Quentin from solitary confinement, and I found out they had video cameras on the yard. A few months later, Bruce Sinofsky came in with Radical Media, and I want y'all to get a picture of when we first pulled the camera equipment or allowed to walk out to the yard with the camera equipment. How y'all think the guards felt? Not very happy, right? And for those of us who've been on the inside, they used to live under that convict code, how we think the population felt. They was like, get that camera out my face. Because the only time they were used to seeing the camera was when the goon squad was coming to collect some evidence against them. So there was a lot of education that had to happen on the yard. And as a result of that, I like to think that we changed the dynamic in the way in which media companies were coming inside of prison to tell our stories, because we no longer had to depend on them to get our message out. We could construct our own message that we wanted to get out. But it was a tricky tightrope, because one of the first things the warden said to me, and you know, big thumbs up, big shout out to Warden Ayers. He pulled me to the side and he said, I want you to remember something. He said, you can say whatever you want to say, but you might only get to say it once. You could say something in which I could not even protect you. And so we had to be very strategic in how we went about not only trying to educate the staff, not only trying to educate the prison population, but how we constructed our stories. There's no such thing as investigative journalism in prison. So the short part of my story is I just really want to excite us about how we control our narratives, how we share our narratives, and how much change could come out of us sharing our narratives and not depending on mainstream media. Shout out to all the storytellers. Let's give it up for them. I would like to invite us all back up for a minute. This is where we're gonna take a photo out. We needed someone who's got good cameras. Everybody pull your phones out.